All right, we are live. Welcome to the Shark Tank podcast and FiberFix webinar, how to get into 25,000 retail locations. If you're just joining us and you want to go to the action, we're starting this about 10 minutes early. So the webinar will actually start officially in 10 minutes. So we're going to spend the next few minutes saying hello to everyone, welcoming you here, introducing Spencer, and muting my live feed. Okay, so I just want to say hello to everyone and welcome. Spencer's here. We're going to do a couple minutes of pre-chat while everyone fills into the room. Spencer, say hello. Welcome.
Hey, good to see you.
Now, if everyone doesn't remember you, you are here from FiberFix. You were featured in Shark Tank season 5, right? When you did your deal with Lori?
You bet, yeah.
Oh, show it again. You have to be talking. If I'm talking, it won't show you. So.
Oh, gotcha, yeah. Got the FiberFix catalog right here. Season 5 of Shark Tank.
All right, so I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to log into the chat roll, which is below. You don't have to log in, so that's a little deceiving. You do have to assign yourself a name. So give yourself a name, say hello. We're going to be getting feedback from you during the webinar, so I'll remind you again before we officially start. But go ahead and do that so we can communicate with you during the episode and have a live discussion. So Spencer, that was a 2015 catalog. Is that stuff all outdated or what's the deal? Where's the new stuff?
It's not totally outdated, but we do have a lot of new stuff. So we're still working on the 2016 catalog. But yeah, we've just been working on expanding the brand, trying to make it so it's just not a one-hit wonder product, but actually a brand that people recognize and trust in stores. And it's a long process, but we've made a lot of progress. So we're excited for what we've got planned for fall of 2016.
And then I also want to make sure everyone can hear you okay. The volume's a little bit low on my side, so maybe bring the mic close. What are you speaking into? Your headphones there?
Yeah, just a little headphones here.
Okay. So if you're in chat, if you can hear okay, say yes. If you can't, say no. Let me know. Make sure you're coming through clearly before we get started. For those who didn't see the original email, you and I caught up recently at the National Hardware Show, and you were showing me some of the new products that you're releasing, and there were close to a half a dozen of them, including the duct tape, which I think is going to be the home run. Am I wrong in saying this is going to change duct tape forever?
No, we've got a new version of duct tape that's coming out. It's called FiberFix 10X tape. It's crazy strong stuff. It's so strong you can't actually tear it. We give you a knife so that you can cut it yourself. And so, yeah, we're just trying to I guess, make duct tape on steroids here. So FiberFix tapes are taking over.
When is it released? Like, you wouldn't let me take the sample, which I was very disappointed about. I had people who wanted to bounce.
Sorry about that. No, yeah, it'll be coming out. It's going to be rolling out to stores in August. And so, yeah, the sample that we had at the show was just a prototype. We've got final totally perfected samples that are currently in shipping containers on their way over from our factory right now. So we're very anxious to get those into the market. I've made a lot of pre-sales for that product. So
I was going to write an article about how well the company has done, or mention it in a podcast or whatever. Why haven't we seen you on a Shark Tank update recently, or Beyond the Tank, or somewhere talking about the companies that you acquired, the licensing deals, and all the other Shark Tank action that's been happening in the background? That's super secret still.
No, it's no big. We're not trying to keep it secret. It's just from our perspective, when we launched FiberFix, and after about a year and a half, 2 years, we realized we were in so many stores. We were thinking, why would you just stay focused on this one brand? And so we started working with some other brands and realizing that for a lot of consumer products, it's really hard to get going in retail because retailers have all these requirements, but we were able to bring these other brands under an umbrella company that we created called Spark Innovation. It helps us get these products into retail really quick. And so it's no secret, but yeah, we're working with some other brands to help them get them more exposure, help them get on their feet and get into stores quicker.
Excellent. So I'm still looking for people in chat to sign in and let me know that they can hear and that everything's working properly. It seems like it is where I'm at, but I need to hear back from you. So go ahead and click on the chat box and give yourself a name. I know it can't have any spaces in it, otherwise it won't show up. And then just check in, let me know that you're here and that you can hear everything okay. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. I've got a list here, looking through all my stuff. of about 24 questions. And so I'm going to select as many as I can to run through with Spencer and mention your name and your company so you can get some instant feedback from him and his expert opinion. And then we're also going to talk about some of the things I mentioned, like making sure that you understand what you don't know about getting in 25,000 locations, how to leverage buyers, how to make them move quickly. And if you're on the earlier, if you're more towards the inception end of your business, how to get in front of them, get their attention and get them interested in the product. So sign into chat. I want to see kind of which of those is the most relevant to the audience that's here today. If I had a scale of 1 to 5, are you a newbie 1, like a newborn in the wholesale business, or are you a 4 or 5 where you've already got some exposure, but you're looking to ratchet it up a little bit? So I'd like to get that feedback from you, and I need you to be in chat in order to make that happen. So Spencer, we've got a couple more minutes before we kick things off here. I'm curious, in terms of the 25,000 stores, kind of break down the percentage of that's in certain markets and certain locations. Like I know Lowe's is a really big one for you, but help us understand who the other retailers are and what percentage of your business they make up.
Okay. So just as a disclaimer, FiberFix sells to predominantly DIY retailers, mass retailers, but you'll find that these mass retailers act very similarly, if not exactly the same as other retailers in different categories, like a Bed Bath & Beyond or a Walmart. And so the breakdown would be, we're about 50% mass retail being like your Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, Walmart. And then the other 50% is independent retail stores like Ace Hardware, True Value, Do It Best, Handy Hardware. And the main difference being that with the mass retailer, you've got one buyer that can let you into all the doors of the store versus the independent retailers. It's kind of like a whole bunch of, it could be a corporate company like Ace, but they franchise out their stores. So all the stores are individually owned and you have to sell to all of those stores.
Gotcha. And then in terms of some of the other locations, I think we might have retailer specific questions. So give us some more of the locations you're selling into specifically, where a lot of the volume's going.
For sure. So the automotive industry is big for us as well. So Pet Boys, O'Reilly's, Napa. We've got marine supply stores. We have industrial accounts to sell to, Grainger being the biggest account there. Homeware, retailers like Walgreens, Bed Bath & Beyond, CVS, these kind of like convenience stores. And we've sold to some sporting goods stores like a Dick's Sporting Goods, Sports Authority, Sportsman's Warehouse. So yeah, those would be the main categories for us: DIY, automotive, outdoors, and industrial.
Excellent. All right, it's just about time to get started. I'll make a little note here for anyone who's just joining us. A ranking of 1 would be few to no wholesale accounts. You're kind of just getting started. You're churning in the water. And then, hi, Terry. How's it going? Welcome. And number 5 would be someone who is like Spencer, who's already got a lot of exposure and looking just to pick up a couple more tips or things that they can learn from his experience as opposed to their own. I'm guessing we probably got a lot of 2 through 4, maybe some 1, but I figured everyone would probably be in the 2 to 3 range. Nick's a 4, so that's really good. But that's going to help us make sure we're talking directly to you about the things that are important to you and not focusing on stuff that's above or below your level. So let me make a note here about that. And we'll go ahead and get started. Why is it calling me Anon1507?
No idea. But hello, Leslie.
Hey, Leslie, how are you?
Welcome.
Okay, so from now on, I am Anon1507, which I think was the name of a Charlize Theron movie a couple of years ago that I never saw. So Mina's a 2. Welcome, Mina. Thank you for your honesty. And that's 2 to 3. It's kind of where I was feeling like everyone would be. So this is really helpful in terms of the feedback. As we start, just for whoever's on chat, can you hear everything okay? Spencer and I coming through, yes or no?
Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Spencer's the strong silent type, so we're going to really make sure he projects here. Leslie, if you're talking to me, I didn't put a name in. I did, and then the chat made me refresh, and I got refreshed and like resurrected with a new name. So I'm stuck with it now. I don't know how to change it. So I'll be Anon 1507. All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. Please continue to involve yourselves in the chat. Usually with these webinars, I have a deck prepared and we kind of go through a very specific agenda in terms of what we're going to talk about. Today, I don't have a sales deck or a screen share. I just have the questions you gave me, and Spencer's prepared with some major bullet points that he thinks are going to be helpful for you that you can use as actionable content today. And we're going to spend about 15 minutes at the end. With the first 15, we'll go through your question. We'll go through an introduction and some of his points. Last 15, we're going to read the questions that you submitted. For those of you asking, yes, I do have the questions. I'm looking at them right now. I'm just trying to decide how I'm going to get all these in a short amount of time. So I would like to do that. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome Spencer once again and introduce him. Season 5 partner of Lori Grenier for FiberFix. He's been on QVC. He's in 25,000 retail locations. He's still working with Lori in terms of retail and spreading the brand. So Spencer, hello again. Welcome. How's it going? And I'm excited to have you here.
Hey, glad to be here, TJ. Thanks for inviting me to your show. This is awesome.
Right. So I don't want to waste anyone's time, including our own here. So let's first of all talk about some of the things that are really important in terms of someone who's at a level 1 to 3 in getting attention from retailers, getting on their good side, and getting things moving as quickly as possible. Why don't you hit us with some strong value data in terms of starting out and getting traction?
Okay. Well, if you have a consumer product or an idea that you're working on, you probably want to get to retail because you know that the retailers can sell a lot of product for you. Every time you place your product in a new store, it's kind of like you put your product on autopilot, and hopefully it's selling itself off the shelf if you've got some good merchandising and the associates in the store know about your product. And so when it comes to collecting retail contacts, it's a big stumbling block for a lot of people. They just don't know where to turn to figure out how to reach out to these retailers. And I would say before you try and reach out to some of these big retailers, probably one of the best things you can do, and this is going to help you learn a lot about how to sell your product and how to pitch your product, is just to go to some local trade shows. There's trade shows for every category you can think of, and you'd be surprised how many buyers actually attend to some of these smaller shows. Especially independent buyers. And I'd always start when bringing your product to the retail market. I'd always start approaching the independent retail. Independent retail being your mom and pop stores, local shops that are just owned by just a few people, not these big national chains. And so that can help you get some good exposure and learn about how to sell your product. You're going to say something? You mentioned
earlier when we talked that if people have a goal to do what you've done and get in 25,000 stores, they always set their sights on the Targets, the Walmarts, and the Lowe's. But that, in your opinion, is a mistake. They should get their feet wet with the smaller independents first.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like that's definitely where you want to be. You want to be in those big mass retailers, but there are a lot of things you're going to learn about your product in terms of how it sells and what the best merchandising displays you can put it on in those smaller stores first. So don't be so anxious to get signed up with a Walmart or Target or Bed Bath & Beyond or Home Depot that you end up getting a really good deal that you can't support from a manufacturing standpoint, or you end up putting in a display in the stores that you really haven't validated if it's going to work well or not, and then it ends up not performing well and you get delisted from that store.
Is that how you started out? Was that with independents? Because I know you got Lowe's pretty early in the game. So just take us down that road quickly and kind of explain how you got your start with FiberFix.
For sure. So before FiberFix, I had done a little bit of retail with some other products before, and I kind of understood the difference between these mass retailers and these independent retailers. And we did start with independents. With FiberFix, our first customer was a True Value store. And True Value, Ace Hardware, Do It Best, these are these corporate companies that franchise out all the individual stores. And so in order to sell these independents, you have to talk to the owner of this one store or these small stores. And so we actually just went online, typed in Ace Hardware in Google, and just pulled up a list of all the local stores and just smiled and dialed and just tried to get a hold of these hardware store owners, scheduled a visit when we could come and meet with them in person, or we could send them some samples and some one-pagers, and just worked on closing these deals one at a time. And after we'd gone into about 15 to 20 of those stores, we went to a Ace Hardware show, and we got into about 200 Ace Hardware stores, of these small stores at the show. And that's when we reached out to Home Depot. Actually, Home Depot was our first mass retailer that we started working with. And I think we reached out to them in it must have been February or March of 2014. And we didn't have a deal lined up to go into stores until about July of that year. So it was about 6-7 months before we actually got a 200 store test going with Home Depot.
And do you think you would have gotten the test without having the placement in True Value prior to that, or Ace? Sorry, I forgot who it was.
I really don't think we would have, because we were able to leverage our sell-through, and that's all the buyers care about at the end of the day. They want to know what the sell-through is going to be of your product. And so if you can't give them an educated estimate of what that sell-through is going to be in their stores, it's going to be really hard to close that deal with the mass retailer. And so you can leverage what you learn with those smaller retailers and the big retail.
All right, and I forgot to mention earlier, because we don't have a deck, I don't have a handout or anything, so I'd have a pencil and paper ready for some of the more important items like that one, with the buyers focusing on the sell-through. So put a little star by that. And let's talk, so you mentioned approaching the retailers. Let's talk about collecting contacts and understanding the buyer perspective. Spencer, break that down for us.
Okay. So when it comes to collecting contacts, again, trade shows is a great place to collect those contacts. The second place that I'd recommend is actually a website called the chainstoreguide.com. Not advocating that you have to do this, but look online for some credible companies that are selling retail store information. You'd be actually surprised how much downloadable content there is on these retail stores. And so the retailers aren't trying to make it impossible for you to be able to get in touch, but sometimes it can be a little hard at the beginning. So you can download these lists and you can compose an email blast and, for example, email blast everyone who works in Target, all the buyers that work in Target, or a VP that works in Target that might be able to give you the contact for the buyer.
And that's, for anyone who didn't hear it, that's chainstoreguide.com?
Yep, that's one. And there's lots. I'm not saying advocating Chain Store Guide as the one to go to, but there's I just search for downloadable retail contacts, and sometimes there's a fee anywhere from $25 to $200 to download those.
What's your experience with paying the fee? Have you done it before, or have you?
Totally worth it. It only takes one deal to make it pay for itself over and over again. So, highly recommend it.
Okay, great. Good advice. Now, in terms of those who are more at a 2 or 3 and they've got some contacts in retail, they're having discussions, let's talk about leverage. Now, a lot of people here probably don't know that when you were in the Shark Tank, I don't remember what valuation you asked for. I'm too lazy to look it up here, but I know that you told me when they started straying away from what you wanted, you guys went out in the hall and came back and asked for something completely ridiculous just so you could recenter the conversation to where you wanted to go. In your case, it was a equity line of credit for $1 million that you didn't need. Now, if you go into forums or hang out in the nerdy Shark Tank places that I'm in, people go apoplectic when they see this on TV. They're like, FiberFix are idiots. Spencer's an idiot. Like, why would they do that? That's so dumb. But in actuality, the reverse is true. You guys ended up getting a lot closer to what you wanted by throwing out that little head fake there. So I thought that was a funny story. Hope you guys enjoyed it. But talk to us about leveraging your strengths and putting pressure on the buyers to get what you want. Give us some nuggets.
Okay. So when it comes to, taking a step back here and looking at Shark Tank is a great way to get a lot of exposure, and it's obviously a great way to network with some really powerful investors. Knowing that there was definitely a marketing aspect to Shark Tank, we felt that it was really important to have some retail traction going before our Shark Tank episode aired. And the reason being is anytime you do a big campaign, it doesn't have to be Shark Tank. If you're doing a big online campaign, you're releasing new videos, you're doing a flash sale or something, you've got to have something to point to that gives a little bit of urgency to the buyer. And for us at that time, we did use Shark Tank and said, hey, we've got 8 million people that are watching the show. They're going to be looking for it in stores. We need to get this into stores as soon as possible. And so we're able to kind of leverage the exposure from Shark Tank to propel us quickly into retail stores. The big difference, I think, between FiberFix and a lot of other companies that go on Shark Tank is that a lot of people do not start even talking to retailers before they go on Shark Tank, whereas FiberFix was pretty well primed. We were already in a lot of independents. We had some tests going in some of the mass retail stores, and so when that marketing opportunity presented itself, we were able to press the throttle and just take advantage of it to its fullest extent and get some good programs going. So yeah, creating some urgency with the buyer is a really good tactic, and you can do that. It doesn't have to be through Shark Tank, but you can line it up with videos or any online marketing push that you're doing.
So I know for a fact we've got people in this webinar that are going to be on Shark Tank next season, or they're in the audition process and they've got pretty good odds. So okay. For those that are not, I'm sure they're thinking, well, that's great if I can tell my buyer I'm going on Shark Tank. So I guess you can all try it and just see if they believe you or not. For those who are not in the process, what are some other ways you've been able to leverage the, your strengths to get buyers to move? And I hear these stories a lot from people in wholesale about making certain dates, being part of promotions, but what are some of the things that have worked for you outside of the Shark Tank arena?
Okay. So you have to know your retailer pretty well. And one of the questions that you want to ask these retailers when you first reach out to them is, when does their planogram reset? Because these buyers, their hands are kind of tied in terms of when they can introduce new items. And so if your product is completely novel, it doesn't exist in the store already, or doesn't even fit into an existing category, it's going to be really hard for that buyer to introduce it to stores when it's not one of those planogram reset dates. And so when you know that there's a planogram reset date, you can kind of position yourself to put some of your marketing activities around that planogram reset date. And you can tell the buyer that you've got these things lined up and that are going to be rolling out that are going to help support your program when it gets to stores. And so that's the approach I would take with a new product, understanding when the planogram reset date is, and say, hey, I want this program in stores on this date, and this is what I'm going to be doing to support that program while it's in stores.
All right, now, one of the things that I hear that's tragic is people who are newer to retail who make colossal, costly mistakes. And mistakes that in hindsight are not that hard to avoid. They just don't know what they don't know. So let's talk about some of the mistakes FiberFix made, a couple of ones that stick out that people should avoid if they don't have the level of experience that you now do. Okay,
so yeah, there's tons of them. I will tell you two of the biggest ones that we made in hopes that you can avoid them. One of them was with our first rollout to Lowe's. It was a nationwide rollout. Super excited about this beautiful tower display that we were rolling out right next to a TV that showcased FiberFix perfectly. And when our product arrived to Lowe's stores, it wasn't scanning at the receiving departments in these Lowe's stores. And so the mistake we had made is we didn't read through the routing guide that these retailers will provide you when you start working on a program and their merchandising requirements. And we actually had the wrong format of barcode on all of the products that we had sent to Lowe's. Now, our saving grace, thankfully, was that even though the receiving department at Lowe's couldn't scan it, the actual cash register could scan that barcode. And so we were able to push that program through, even though it had the wrong barcode on it. And we were just, we had a chargeback. A chargeback is just a fine that you have to pay for not complying with a certain retailer's set of requirements. But had that barcode not been able to scan at the cash register, we would have had to take all that product back and repack, and probably would have lost money on that first deal, which would have been devastating for us as a startup. The other mistake we made, so it's really important that you understand your manufacturing constraints and your shipping constraints when it comes to logistics in terms of how long your product's going to be on the water or on trucks. And the reason why this is important is because there are certain times of the year where all the logistics are going to slow down because there's high demand. That can be because of the holidays. That can be because of Chinese New Year. And so the mistake we had made was we had this big promotional program rolling out to Lowe's once again. and it was on a shipping container on its way from our factory in China. And we didn't realize how congested the ports were going to get. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but about a year and a half ago, there was a big strike on the ports because there were just too many shipments that were coming in, and these ports were just decided not to receive these shipments. So our product sat on a shipping vessel outside the ports of California for 6 weeks on the water, and we missed our promotional program in stores. And so,
ouch.
Yeah, the lesson learned there is just plan with a lot of cushion time in your when you have a program that's rolling out to retail stores. Give yourself 4 to 6 weeks extra, so have everything there early, so that if you do have these last minute things that happen, you're not at the whim of someone else's process or program.
Leslie actually asked a question in chat about the chargeback. I'm assuming that's from your original issue with the barcodes at Lowe's. Did you end up getting charged back for those, or did you resolve it?
We did get a chargeback. Chargeback, not saying that they returned all the product, but I think that chargeback was for around $13,000. And that was the chargeback lump sum. How that breaks out individually per store, I'd have to go look that up.
All right, let's do some listener questions. Here we go. I'm excited. So I've got my spreadsheet here. So that's why I'm looking up in the air. And let's start with Chris Harden. Chris actually represents a product called Trobo that you guys might remember from season 7 of Shark Tank. So Chris, great to have you here today. He wants to know how you pay for that amount of inventory. Big challenge people don't realize when they get into Walmart, they think life's good. Now you got to pay and carry the load for all this money that gets out, hoping it'll sell. So how do you do it, Spencer?
Okay. So in terms of paying for that inventory, there are a lot of programs out there that you can look into called factor financing. And just from a legal standpoint, I'm not going to suggest any specific one, but you can look into those. And basically, if you've got a purchase order from a retailer, a credible retailer, you can approach these firms that do factor financing. And basically, it's saying that they will cover the costs of getting this product into stores, and then they're going to take a percentage of the overall profit of this deal that happens. And so that's all going to be done up front. Even if your product ends up getting returned to you, you're probably going to still be owing them quite a bit of money. But that's one way that if you don't have the capital that you need, you can do this factor financing. Another way is, you can take on investments. That is definitely one advantage of working with investors. Even if you have taken money for a certain percentage of the company, a lot of times you can reach back out to that investor and say, hey, we've got this deal that's pending. We need X amount of money. Can you lend it to us? And you can work out a deal with that investor where usually you get some pretty favorable terms, because they've got skin in the game. They're just as interested as you are in making that program happen.
Nice. All right, we're going to try to move through these because I got a lot of questions here. But I remember talking to Chris before we went on Shark Tank, and this happened. Beardhead, my last podcast, if you've listened to it, he said they lost about 150 grand because he couldn't afford to put more inventory out. Now he wish he had. And Slideboards is releasing this week. They had a similar problem. They just couldn't supply the inventory. They couldn't get it made. Didn't have the capital. So let's go to Leslie. Just asked, do you use factoring or do the Sharks help finance stuff? I think I know the answer to this, Spencer, but why don't you pop that one off real quick?
So we actually have been fortunate enough to have one of the founders who's been able to put money into the company to help us cover the costs of those orders. But the Sharks, I know, will offer help, and I don't think enough people negotiate this on the tank, but you should definitely talk about that up front. And I think you'll find that investors will probably ask for more equity, but it's something that you can negotiate to not give them more equity. So I don't think that's a deal killer for you.
Okay, Chris is asking about sales on website versus wholesale. I'm going to push that one, Chris, because I'm going to come back to that since we're mostly focused on wholesale. Russie asked, talk to me about planograms. How do you do them? Who pays?
Okay. So with planograms, just how I interpret that question is, we pay for everything when it comes to the planogram. We're going to pay for the display that they're going to put in stores. I've got a picture of a program here This is just a retail program that we present to a lot of the independent hardware stores. And when I'm
pan back a little bit so we can see the whole thing.
So on this, we just call it our sales one pager here. I've got all the pricing for all the products, the exact quantity that's going to be on that display. I'm telling the retailer what their cost is for all of these products. And I just try and make the buying decision super easy. I've got the total program cost on there. And I offer to pay for the cost of the display myself because it's insignificant when you look at the overall cost. I mean, a display like that, a nice freestanding display in stores could cost me anywhere from $15 to $30, but I'm probably making $500 plus per store for every store I get that program into. So it's definitely worth it.
Would you be willing to send that single page out if people want to see a copy, or use that to make their own if they don't have one, or improve it?
You know what? I'd be glad to do that. Yeah.
If you'd like one, just say yes in the chat box, and I'll send it out to you when we're done. Okay, let's see here. Now, Leslie is from Good Hangups, and she cheated. She has questions within the questions. So we talked about the biggest mistakes working with big boxes. She wants to know if you attempted big box before Shark Tank, which we answered, but she also wants to know what was the biggest difference since being on Shark Tank. So maybe touch on that real quick.
Biggest difference between retail response before and after Shark Tank?
Yeah, in their attitude and their approach and speed of movement.
Yeah, so what I don't want people to think is that you have to be on Shark Tank to get into retail. In fact, I don't think going on Shark Tank is going to help you execute getting into retail any better. It might help make some of the buyers more interested, but it's definitely not going to help you execute and place that product in stores. So before Shark Tank, I think, we were making progress with these retailers. If we didn't have a marketing activity lined up like Shark Tank, it probably would have taken us another 1.5 to 2 years longer to get to where we're at right now. And so it accelerated those deals, but it wasn't what opened the door for us.
Hey, another question from Leslie is about Lori. Now, you and I have talked about Lori a lot. She wants to know how Lori has helped you specifically with your retailers. Go for it.
Okay. So Lori is absolutely a phenomenal partner to work with. She is really talented with QVC. I mean, she's got her own show on QVC. I don't think you can have a better contact than Lori for QVC. Lori also has some good connections with Bed Bath & Beyond. And Lori's been really helpful to be able to pull onto a phone call when you're talking with the buyer, just to kind of give a little bit of credibility to your story. Because I know there's a lot of speculation about, like, okay, if what happens on TV is actually what happens on real life. And so to be able to pull Lori onto a phone call with us and say, yes, we are working with Lori, I think has added a lot of credibility.
All right, and counter to that, are there any drawbacks to having a shark in terms of negotiation or just the people? There was a guy named Pavlok that finished and his company was called Pavlok. He finished the season getting cussed out by Kevin O'Leary, and he didn't think having a shark would help him. So are there any downsides to having a shark partner?
I think if there are downsides, it's probably just how you are managing the conversation with the retailer. I think sometimes it's easy for a company that's been on Shark Tank to think that they are entitled to certain programs and that they can cut through every process that exists in the company. And that's normal for entrepreneurs. But I think some retailers can really be turned off by that and not work with you because you have been trying to force their decisions. So you gotta be careful.
All right, I'm going to read between the lines there and ask everyone to do the same, because I've heard horror stories from a couple of different entrepreneurs about that sort of thing happening. So I'll let you figure that out on your own, what's meant by that. This is a question from Scott from Bouncy Bands. He wants to know, how do I find, or how do I select the best distributors for my product?
Okay, so I actually work a lot with distributors. It is a disclaimer here. I don't work with any distributors in the US. I only work with distributors internationally. I feel like in the US, you should do everything you can to work directly with these retailers and not go through distributors. But you will find certain retailers that don't allow anyone except specific retailers to place those. So, but I feel like those are few and far between. But in terms of selecting the right retailers for international distribution, I have a questionnaire that I use that, I mean, there's nothing unique about my questionnaire. It's just basically making sure that your distributor has done this before. You don't want to work with a distributor who's saying, oh, I live in such and such country and I like your product, and because of that, I should distribute your product. I mean, that's totally faulty logic. You want to look for someone who's done a similar product to yours in price and size and is working with retailers that you're interested in selling to in that country before you start to do a distribution agreement with them.
All right, now I'm volunteering you again. We didn't talk about this, but would you be willing to share the questionnaire for people who'd like to cheat and copy that as well?
For sure. For sure.
Right.
I'll give you a summary of it. Mine's probably a little too long, so you can add your own questions to it.
If you would like a copy of that sent to you, give me a yes or a thumbs up or a oh hell yeah, and we'll make sure you get that as well. Good times. Good stuff. Okay, let's see here. Good question from Mina. This is Mina Lulabop asking about, okay, this is kind of a long one, so let me summarize this. I should have done it before, but what are you going to do? Mina wants to know if while selling on Zulily or The Climb or other flash sites, will this negatively affect my chances of getting product and staying in retailers and staying there? And then there's some other information here, but that's essentially the crux of it is if you're doing flash deals, is it going to affect the attitude of your retailers towards your product?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Kind of feel like it's a loaded question, so I feel like I have to be careful how I answer it. Flash deal sites can be really good as long as that flash deal is only over a certain amount of time and it gets taken down, like you're just doing a promotion. That usually doesn't make retailers upset. But for example, if you go onto Amazon and you list your product underneath the MSRP that you have in retail stores, you're going to make your retailers really upset, and you'll have them calling pretty soon, I'm sure. Or if you decide that you're not going to sell to Amazon and you're going to sell to someone else who's going to go sell on Amazon, you need to make sure that you have an agreement in place that we refer to as our MAP agreement. It's just the minimum advertised price agreement, that they agree that they're not going to sell your product online or anywhere under a certain price, or you probably will run into problems with mass retailers.
All right, now this question was broken into a couple parts. I'm going to go to the next one. If you have a product that sells at a certain price, what are your thoughts on developing a cheaper variation to target a lower end market? Now, I have very strong feelings about this, but you're the expert, so I'm going to let you answer that. And should you do it under the same brand? Or, now I'm getting into the weeds here. Just answer the question I gave you.
So I'll give you an example of FiberFix. FiberFix comes in 3 different sizes. What we have found from those 3 different sizes that have 3 different price points is that the customer actually isn't as sensitive as we thought they were to the price of the product. And so just simply reducing the price of the product would be cannibalizing our own sales. And so if you really are trying to go after a different section of the market that you think might be lower income and it's not going to be able to afford it, then I don't see any problem making a cheaper version of the product as long as there's something very different about it from your main product. For example, we have the FiberFix 2-inch strip that's 2 inches by 50 inches long. Well, that sells great in all the main retail stores, but in a convenience store, it might be a little too high of a price. So we've actually made a household strip. It's just a 1-inch by 12-inch version of the product. And so we're able to hit that lower price point, but it is a different product. So that way I don't have my convenience store retailers, I don't have my mass DIY retailer like a Home Depot saying, like, why are they getting a better price? I can say, no, these are 2 different products. You have the one that's better for your customer. This one's better for their customer.
Excellent. Good answer. Okay. A lot of chatter in the box about sales reps, and that was the last part of Mina's question as well. What are your thoughts on using sales reps to get into the larger retailers? Go.
I do everything I can not to work with the sales rep, honestly. um, and it's because what you sacrifice when you work with a sales rep is okay. So you're going to sacrifice some commission, but I honestly, the 5%, 5 to 10% isn't a big deal. It's the relationship that you're putting at stake. If that sales rep works with you for the next 3 to 6 months and then moves on to another company, or just decides that they're not going to work with your product anymore, then you don't have a good enough relationship most times with that buyer to continue where they left off. And so that's why you got to be really careful working with sales rep, is that you can lose touch with your buyers and just be out of touch with them. But again, with that being said, there are certain accounts. For example, Walmart is actually probably an account that I would look into doing a sales rep agreement with, unless you have Walmart chasing you, which is great. It's a good problem to have. But sometimes you need someone close to Walmart's headquarters to be constantly going over there to help give updates on your product and how programs are progressing.
Yeah, we've talked about this with Tom Czar from Media One, is a friend of mine. He's the main QVC rep. He does all Mark Cuban stuff. He does Dyson vacuum cleaner. Does about $200 million a year in sales. And this is exactly what his opinion is. He goes, if you're going after the big boys, you can do it on your own. And a lot of the DIYers will always do that. But Walmart has the entire city of Bentonville basically is circled around them. Like, they're the nucleus of that town, and those are all Walmart servicers. So it's better to play the odds. And then once you have the relationship, then maybe you can back away from using the rep. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. But if you're starting out new, you're a small fish in a big pond. So
yeah, that's great advice.
Let's go to Nick May, and the company is Remy Shaving. Sorry, Nick, if I'm mispronouncing it. First time I've heard of your company. He asks, is the sale generally final, or can the retailer return unsold product? Do you have to negotiate this agreement? Go.
Every deal's different. A lot of times these retailers, when they're introducing a new product, they're going to insist on consignment, which means that they're only going to pay you based off what's selling in stores. Even if it's not consignment, it might be net 30, net 45, net 90, just saying that they're going to pay you 30 days, 45 days, 90 days after they've received it into the stores. I've heard of net 120, I've heard of net 360, so just be careful with when they're actually going to pay you. But a lot of times there are disclaimers on there too that they reserve the right to return the product. Sometimes it can be more costly, though, to actually return the product than just to discount it or liquidate it in stores. So I can only think of one time that's happened to us, and that wasn't a FiberFix product, but it wasn't something that we didn't see coming, though. So.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about leverage, and you mentioned the sale through and thinking in terms of what's important to the buyer and making their job easy. I always think that when you start out, you're going to kind of take it in the shorts, especially with a new retailer. And going back to QVC, same thing. Most of the risk is going to be on you until you've built up a track record. And then they start to trust you. They start to allow you to negotiate points that newbies would not. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and a lot of times these retailers, a bargaining chip they throw out there is that they want exclusivity. And there are certain cases where exclusivity would make sense, where you'd only work with one retailer with your product for a limited time. But from my experience, I think you should always press that retailer to say, if I give you exclusivity, like what are you going to be doing for me? And I would push a promotional program with that question. So like, okay, we'll give you that exclusivity, but you have to agree to take this much product, and you have to get rid of this clause. That's a big red flag for our company. And a lot of times when I've done that, they've backed off the exclusivity, which is usually what you want. You don't want to be tied to just one retailer.
Yeah, that can be dangerous for sure. And then especially with sales reps, exclusivity with a rep, it can be the kiss of death. It can cost you a year of your life.
For sure. I would not ever do exclusivity with a rep. Maybe for a specific account over a certain time, but never for perpetuity, for sure.
Yeah, deadlines are good. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Chris's questions. We're just about out of time. I promised you a half hour. We're at 35 minutes, so we're going to cut it. If you have any last questions that are awesome, put them in now and we'll squeeze them in. But I'm going to ask Chris's question about wholesale versus retail. So let me roll up to it and make sure I have it exactly right. Chris asked, what are your sales on your website versus retail? How do you sway customers to come to you directly, as I think you make more money that way? Now, obviously, he's correct. direct to consumer is a more profitable model, but it's a different model, and you've built your business on wholesale. So kind of help us understand what the dynamic is there, Spencer.
Yeah. So I think the underlying question with Chris's question here is just that you got to ask yourself is just where does my customer shop? For a product like FiberFix, it's a DIY product that's found in a lot of hardware stores that is targeting a customer who is looking for a repair to something that's rather urgent. He needs it quickly. And so even next day shipping is not going to work for him. He needs it right now. And so our customer shops in these do-it-yourself stores like Home Depot, Ace, and True Value. 97% of our overall sales is done in retail, with less than 3% done online. That is very FiberFix specific. And so knowing where your customer shops is a big deal because obviously you may have just as big an opportunity online if you're playing your cards right as you would in retail stores. But overall, I'd say that if you can get your product in retail stores, a lot of people are making those impulse price decisions in stores, and you're gonna find that retail, if you're playing it right, is gonna probably take the majority of your business. I'd be really surprised to see for a consumer product it not taking at least a 40 to 60% of revenue.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that Amazon is a good middle of the road to determine whether or not you're going to be successful direct to consumer versus retail. If you have to rely on retailers, because obviously if you don't need retailers to distribute your product, then you shouldn't use them. But most people don't have that luxury. So I always kind of lean to Amazon to see how many people I can convert, whether I can get them on a mailing list, whether I can get them to social media and start selling to them directly. So that's just my 2 cents. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. I hope you got a lot of information out of this. I will send you the 2 pieces of information that we promised you. And I have one last question before we go, which is, I promised we're not selling anything and there's no services, but we're tempted to make that happen. I think that so many people struggle through retail and make costly mistakes. Spencer has actually offered to help me put together a bundled package that would essentially be a coaching course that you could pick up, and it would teach you how to do these things. And it would include instructional guides, and it would have Q&As, and would have resources in terms of contacts and reps, and basically be everything you need in a starter package to get you sent off on retail. If you're interested in that, say yes, and we'll consider it. But in any case, thank you for joining us. Look for an email later with the things we promised. And I wish you a lot of luck going forward in the future, and hopefully get to do this again. Thanks a lot, Spencer.
Hey, thanks, CJ. Good to see you.
All right. Bye, everybody.